Skidoo has a soft stop. A soft stop is it might just hurt your performance a little bit. There's no light on the dash that tells you it's happening, but you may not be getting maximum performance. A hard stop is it shuts everything down pretty fast. It won't necessarily kill the motor, but it'll shut it down to 6,000 RPM, at which point in time you either A, have to shut the machine off, let it sit, and restart it for 10 seconds. If it's hard enough on the Skidoo, you have to take it to the dealer and they have to clear the code. It will not run right until you do that. Arctic is actually a fairly simple and very effective system. It just flashes a light on the dash and tells you got detonation. And if it's hard enough, it hits your hard stop, you got to turn it off and restart it, and you go again. It's very simple. It's actually quite effective. When we tune, sometimes we'll actually tune and try to find that hard stop just so we know where we're at. Manufacturers from year to year will change that threshold. 2008 Polaris 800 had a pretty high threshold. 2009 it got a little lower. 2010 it got a little lower yet. And what they're trying to do there is increase engine life, and they're using the detonation sensor to control that. Okay. Unfortunately for us as a consumer, we usually can't tell if the detonation sensor is pulling timing or adding fuel. So we're assuming that we have maximum performance, but we don't necessarily know until we hit that hard stop. Water temperature sensor. They're doing a couple of things with the water temperature sensor. Again, this is a 0 to 5 volt sensor, 2-wire system. They can control, they can put a warm-up mode. So what the ECU will do is it'll look for a certain temperature before it'll go to full timing and fueling, usually 100 degrees. I think a couple of the Skidoos are actually 80 degrees, if I remember right. A couple of the Polarises are 100, 110, 120. So that's one thing they can do with the water temperature sensor, and that keeps us as consumers from pulling out of the trailer and going hammer down and cold season the thing, because it won't allow you to do that. It's gonna dump too much fuel, and it's gonna pull a little bit of timing, and it's just flat out not gonna allow you to run to the full potential. So that's one of the things they can do with water temperature sensor. The other thing they can do is keep you from overheating. If you're running down a hard-packed trail on a mountain sled with no ice scratchers and that water temp gets up to 195 or 210 degrees, you're pushing your luck. They can put a couple of soft stops and even a hard stop in there as well. Soft stop at 195, pulls 2 degrees of timing, kind of slows you down, you lose some power, won't let you run it so hard. 205 or 210, whatever the OEM decides they want to set it at, they can put another soft stop, or they can put a hard stop to where down to 6,000 RPM you go and you can't move. Manifold absolute pressure sensor, or a MAP sensor. You'll notice we've got here Polaris and Arctic factory turbo sleds. What we're doing here is we're basically measuring boost pressure. A MAP sensor is used to measure how much pressure there is in the manifold. So it's taking atmospheric air and combining it with how much you have pressurized that air, and it's giving the ECU a measurement so that it knows how much fuel it needs to add based off of that extra pressure. So that's kind of the difference between a MAP sensor and a barometric pressure sensor. Is one's just basically measuring atmospheric air, where the other is measuring total air pressure at the intake manifold after the carburetor. Okay? Inside the ECU are several maps. There's maps, and those maps are what is how the ECU knows how much fuel or how much it should tell the injector, or how much fuel it should squirt. This map has two entities. You've got RPM down the side on the left, and you have throttle position across the top. And then you've got all the corresponding boxes in the middle. So here we've got 6,250 RPM at 20% throttle. Okay? Now this is a Power Commander map. A Power Commander, you guys know, aftermarket box. It gives us some control over the fueling that we don't have on a stock sled. If we want to modify, typically we got to be able to adjust the fuel somehow.
Dustin's talked about making a map. The guys at SLP have done countless hours of snow testing, developing maps for their specific setups. So if you get it set up from them, and some of the other companies that make exhausts or kits, they'll actually have maps already pre-made. So in that case, you won't have to make your own. But if you're using a setup that is kind of not one of the common setups, then that would be when you would probably want to build your own map, or at least start from a map that's already been made and go from there. But So I know they've done a ton of homework on building maps, so they have a huge resource of knowledge about this. So
yeah, and that's when the EFI thing started happening. A lot of people were so scared of it because just like anything else, you don't understand, you know. And once we kind of started getting the technology as far as the aftermarket to catch up, we started to realize this is something we really want to embrace, and there's two reasons. Number one, it's so much easier for me to send a map file on an email to a customer. I mean, it's easy.
You're trying to tune stuff with EFI. The biggest thing you need to do is figure out the conditions that are causing some phenomenon that you see when you're out riding. For example, you're out riding, you feel a sled hiccup or do something weird, and you say, oh, I think that was about 50% throttle and this RPM. Well, with what you really need to do if you really want to tune it the right way is you need to figure out exactly what condition the sled is running in. Was the sled running hot? Was it running cold? What throttle position was it? Was it 50% or 60%, or was it 55%? You know, were you at 6,500 RPM or were you at 7? All those things make a difference when you're trying to tune the EFI, and you can make a guess when you're out riding, or you could actually try and